סדר לך לשמחה בכל דרכך. על כפיים נישאתך פן תגוף אלה מלאכה, משך ותגוצר מצלניר, יוצא דרך השני סתר. ואיני בעיני ומלאנוכי בצרה, החלצהו והחפותהו, אורך ימים משפיעהו, יראהו בישועתי, אורך ימים משפיעהו. Jewish people respond to death with words of blessing. Baruch Dayan Ha'amet. Praised is the judge of truth. For this is our painful truth. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. Adonai has given and Adonai has taken. Praised be the name of Adonai. These last few years have not been fair to Stanley, and especially this period of COVID, which has forced so much disruption, loneliness, other challenges. When Stanley and Bonnie made plans for this funeral some time ago, this is not what they had in mind. He deserved a large service at B'nai Israel, the synagogue they attended weekly Shabbat services for decades, a synagogue that meant so much to them. But these are the realities of COVID. This is our painful truth. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking the life of Stanley Favin, Shlomo ben Yitzchak Ufruma Fega, with the 3,000-year-old traditions of the Jewish people and the eternity of God. Psalm 23, Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, bino deshe yarbitzeni, al me menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech begeit salmavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha hema yinachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai, dishanta vashemen roshi, kosi rebaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'beit Adonai, la'orech yamim. Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters, restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. From Psalm 15. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagor ba'ohalecha, mi yishkon b'har kodshecha, holech tamim, Yifoel tzedek v'dover emet bilbabo. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity. Do what is right. Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere the Lord. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates, accept no bribe against the innocent. Oseh eleh lo yimot le'olam. Make these deeds your own. You shall stand firm forever. Now I want to call on Colin Alter, friend of the family, chaplain at Brighton Gardens, to share another poem.
Bedford Court.
Bedford Cards, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Looking at it.
Yeah.
A good person, though taken from us too soon, will rest in peace. For honor in old age does not come from length of years. Honor in old age does not come from length of years. Understanding is the gray hair of humanity. A blameless life is ripeness of age. Perfection in limited years is like living for many years. So a good person, though taken from us too soon, will rest in peace. Let us then, with peace of mind, let that good soul rest. Stan had an Aliyah 2 years ago at Bedford Court, and as if his memory had come back, and he knew the prayers. He knew them completely by heart. Just took 1 second of one word to bring everything back. He was a good man.
Thank you very much. We're now going to call on members of the family. First, we're going to hear Fran's voice.
Going after the rabbi, but that's okay. Going to give you a personal perspective from the brother and sister and I as we think about our dad. Our father did not grow up with money, but he knew the value of hard work and provided for our mom and us very well. And as we heard from so many people, that he was like a father figure to them too. And I know that a lot of you share that sentiment. Weekends and holidays were for family. We made sure to visit aunts and uncles on both sides. We had huge family get-togethers with mom and pop and the family. When we were young, my dad often brought out his 8mm camera and made stop-action films, like us running behind a tree and then disappearing instead of running out the other side. His masterpiece, a lot of you will remember, was lining us up at the Wasser's house with all the cousins, and we were all lined up like cars, and, you know, we'd move an inch and he'd stop the camera, and we'd move an inch and we'd stop the camera, and we've got, like, movies of us driving our cars through the living room at Aunt Esther's house. And we all had a great time. Our dad could fix just about everything and loved tinkering in his basement workshop. If anybody was ever down there, you know how organized it was. He could find the perfect size screw or nail from his vast collection of little tidbits and stored in baby jars and bins, baby food jars. That organizational trait was not passed down to me. It was passed down to Amy and Aaron for sure. Dad also dabbled with piano, probably taught by his cousin Florence. And the one song that he could still kind of play through all the years was Scheherazade. So when I was taking piano lessons as a kid for 2 years, I learned how to play Scheherazade. And just like my father had that muscle memory, I kind of played it this morning. And it wasn't perfect, but, you know, I did it. It made me feel good. He loved silly jokes, and especially making children laugh with his Donald Duck impressions. And that comb he always kept in his pocket protector. And he would let anybody comb his hair with it if it made him laugh. Cousin Steve told us that he recently found letters from when he was living abroad as a kid. And my dad would always include fun or silly stories at the end. And instead of saying like P.S., PPS, he would say, here's some baloney. Here's some more baloney in telephone story. We recently found a poem that he sent to a newspaper editor in 1952. He was about 18 years old, on his feelings against youth being sent to war. But he never really joined in or talked about supporting anti-war protests, the Vietnam War or anything, but he did surprise teenage Amy with a peace symbol ring that she wears to this day, and it's on her hand right now. And for my 5th birthday in 1969, he made all the kids protest signs to march around with and, of course, film. Like, no more naps. I'm so glad that you're, it's really wonderful. My father loved his 38-year career at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab, the APL, the lab. He enjoyed solving math problems, to which many can attest, whether it was a homework problem or whatever it was. Aaron provided us with a really great summary of all of his technical work, which we're happy to share with anyone who understands theoretical calculation of spherical pre-mixed laminar flames. Basically, he was proud to have been an early programmer using new computer languages and helping to send satellites up in other projects. A favorite story is that when he taught Fortran, a computer language, to Hopkins engineering grad students in the early 70s, he would give them an A to anyone who'd call him Dr. Favin. Because he got a master's degree.
It's true.
Having a dad who worked with computers in the 60s and 70s was a really big deal. They were still so new and mysterious and considered fit for only geniuses. We always had 1,000 punch cards to use as scratch paper in our house. And on Valentine's Day, he would always make us punch cards that would read, "I love you." I wish I still had one. Because his work was classified, they only allowed families to come and see the one big computer at the lab every 10 years, and it took up the whole room, like you see on TV, the old TV shows. But every summer, the lab had a big picnic with rides and games and food, and we looked forward to it every year. Some people worked there, early teens as their first job, and even my girls remember the picnic that we still went to after he retired. My dad was a quiet man, but he inspired so many. Just some of the people he inspired. Aaron, of course, who became a systems engineer. Cousin Charlie Budman, who's had a stellar career at the same lab at APL. Cousin Michael Budman, a master contractor, who said that Uncle Stan was among the first to get him interested in computers and math. Cousin Stephen, for whom he instilled his love of reading, especially science fiction. And then on to the next generation, following into his footsteps. Granddaughter Lindsay, my baby, who will graduate from Barnard College next spring, then go on to get her master's in computer science at Columbia University. Papa was proud of each of his grandchildren. We called him Papa. Jessica's acting, Michelle's art, David's music, Melanie's teaching, and Lindsay's computer programming. And as for his children, well, we're all educated, productive members of society, and of course, we all model a good Jewish life. And most importantly, each of us are enjoying happy, decades-long marriages, which our parents modeled for us for over 65 years. Just a few thoughts from a few other important people. My Aunt Selma couldn't be here today, but I know you're watching the live stream. My brother was my best friend, and was always there for me and my children. He will be missed so much by family and friends. And my cousin Joyce, my Aunt Selma's daughter, who also was unable to be here today, sent me a long thing to say, but abbreviated. I was blessed to be Stan's niece. He was a true mensch who taught me to drive, walked me down the aisle, and was a role model for my daughters and myself. He was like a second father to me. He never missed a simcha. Uncle Stan, my love and devotion to you always. It's for you, Joyce. And we received so many messages in these past few days from friends and family who describe my father as a mensch, a sweet, kind, lovely, and gentle man. And despite his long and tragic health decline, the staff at Bedford Court, where he lived the last few years, took care of him and loved him dearly. And not only did they say He was their favorite resident. No kidding. They said he was like a papa to all of them. And to all who visited my parents at Bedford Court, thank you. Faye was there all the time, Faye and Jose, to help. And my sister-in-law, Sunny, who I think kept him going, really, for the past several years, was there every day. Every day. I'm going to end this part of my speech. I have one more story afterwards in the words of my father's godson, my parents' godson, Donald Budman. He said, "His kind and gentle nature was exceeded only by his intellect and wit, his love for his family, and our sweet Aunt Bon." So that's from all of us. And I wanted to just share one little story about Thursday. It was Yom Kippur. I was in Baltimore at my shul, and I was listening to the sermon, my rabbi's sermon, and the theme was remembering loved ones who died, and got really emotional. Like, I don't usually cry in shul, but I'm kind of got really emotional in shul. And after the sermon, Melanie and I left. We had 2 cars, and Barry stayed for Yisker. I'm walking to the car with Melanie, and I'm like sobbing. I couldn't figure out what was this outpouring of emotion. That's when my father died. I came home, and there were messages and calls. It was like at that moment, it was when my father. So I think there's something really out there that told me that,
Great job.
And that was beautiful.
Great job.
Now, representing the grandchildren, Jessica and David.
I'm going to pass out some envelopes. I ask that you don't open it until the end of my speech. I think I have enough for everyone, but if you're part of a couple, please share. So please take one and pass it down in this direction, and please take one and pass it down in this direction. Please don't open it until the end of my speech. We'll wait until everybody gets one. Just take one and pass it down. The first thing that came to my mind when I started to process the news on Thursday was how we would find the afikomen. Every Passover, my grandfather would hide a piece of matzah around the house, and whoever found it would get a crisp $5 bill. I pretty much always won because I would cheat. Sorry, Michelle. I'm the eldest grandchild. I have a few years up on everyone, and I had the chutzpah to spy on him throughout the day, so I always knew where to find him. I would hide behind corners and in the staircase, and I would watch him move about the house for hours, just so I could win. My grandfather, a quiet man, lives in these quiet moments. Not words, just me, a little kid, watching him, spying, learning through observing everything I could about this man and where he hides things. These are the moments that stick for me, more than conversation. Because when you're a kid, words don't matter, you don't listen, but you watch and you learn, and you're imprinted forever with people and memories based on what you see and feel and smell. My grandfather lives in those memories. He lives in the sound of tiny plastic penguins going up a mechanical staircase, a toy he was always fixing for us. He lives in the feel of the air in his basement den. The way the door of Canyon Road swung open to a home bursting with food, the taste of lox and bagels, extra red onion. He lives in the way a $5 bill feels in your hand, cold and crisp and important, because you're yay high and you've won something. Illicitly, but still. You've won something, and life is good. My grandfather is the sight of silver hair pressed against the headrest of a car as I sit in the back seat, requesting Alvin and the Chipmunks singing on repeat every time he picked me up from school. He has khaki pants, he has a hat I will forever call a grandpa hat, and he has the way my lips felt on his cheek the last time I kissed him goodbye. My grandfather was strong, quiet, loving, loyal, generous, the head of the table, a true patriarch in the best of ways and the epitome of a family man. I must have spent thousands of my hours of my life with him, watching him. And while most of my memories don't involve a lot of words, except stop shouting, which I haven't, I think it's better this way. It wasn't until Thursday that I realized senses and feelings run so much deeper than speech. And as long as I can shut my eyes and see, smell, taste, hear, and feel his presence, he's still here. Trust me. I housed a bagel with lox and red onions on my way to Maryland, and I felt a lot better. So please, at some point today, I implore you to shut your eyes and recall in vivid detail a memory with Stanley Favin that doesn't involve words. Use all your senses. Make it come alive. Make it permanent. And as you open your envelopes, please, to a memory that I will forever have of my grandfather, I have one last request. To all the grandparents and the future grandparents here with us today, check the staircase. You might find a little grandkid watching you while you hide the opponent. I love you.
So beautiful. Wow. Thank you both for such beautiful tributes. If it is said that the righteous die on Shabbat, what do we say about a person who died on Yom Kippur, which the Torah calls Shabbat Shabbaton, the Shabbat of all Shabbats? It's also said that the righteous die on their birthdays. Stanley died 2 days before his birthday on the secular calendar, which is close enough. But I checked, and on the Jewish calendar, September 18th, 1934 was the 9th of Tishrei. And I'm not sure if anybody knows exactly what time Stanley was born, but if it was after sunset, it means he would have died on his birthday, 10th of Tishrei. We are very clearly dealing with a special person, but not a flashy or loud person. The signature prayer on Yom Kippur is Unatana Tokef, in which we read, "The great shofar is sounded, but a still small voice is heard. Kol dmama daka yishama." The metaphor comes from a scene in the book of Kings where the prophet Elijah is running away after a clash with King Ahab. He flees for his life and he hides in a cave on Mount Sinai and waits for a message from God. Suddenly there is a roaring windstorm, but the Bible tells us, Lo varuach Adonai, God is not in the windstorm. The wind is followed by an earthquake, but again, Lo vara'ash Adonai, God is not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, a raging fire, but God is not in the fire. And then everything grows quiet, but for a still small voice. Kol dmama daka. It is through the still small voice that Elijah understands the word of God. Stanley Favin can be compared to that still small voice. I wasn't sure what Jessica was going to say, but how perfect that you spoke that way. He wasn't boisterous. He wasn't loud. He didn't try to turn things upside down. He just did what was right. He was kind. He smiled. He loved and supported his family. He lived a life grounded in the best of Jewish values. Stanley was born on September 18th, 1934 in Philadelphia, the younger of two children to the late Isidore and Faye Favin. The family moved to the D.C. area when Stanley was just 5 years old, so his parents could open a small grocery store. Stanley attended Calvin Coolidge High School, then earned a BA and master's degree in numerical sciences at the George Washington University. He became a programmer at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, where he worked until his retirement. Stanley's father, Isidore, died suddenly when Stanley was still a teenager. He never really talked about his father's death, but he spoke often about how the Favin and Tarneff families helped him through. His mother Fay, sister Selma, Uncle Fred and Aunt Dorothy, cousins Irving and Pearl, so many other Favins showered Stanley with love and wisdom. His uncle Leon Tarneff became a surrogate father. He and Aunt Mary made sure Stanley stayed grounded. Aunt Ray and Uncle Sam Schechtman lent Stanley the car for dates with Bonnie. And all the loving attention worked. Stanley was the first in his immediate family to graduate college. He paid all the kindnesses forward. When his brother-in-law, Larry Perry, died while his children were still teenagers, Stanley became a kind and supportive father figure for them. Stanley loved his family. He was close with his sister, Selma Perry. Became a beautiful turn of fortune when Selma needed rehab and ended up on the same floor at Bedford Court, which meant that the siblings were together for the last 2 weeks of Stanley's life. And also his brothers-in-law, the late Harry and Elsie Budman, the late Yitzi Budman, the late Esther Wasser, Sandy, the late Vevi Budman, and Jack Budman. And he felt so close to so many nieces and nephews. Stanley met Bonnie on a blind date. I don't know all the details, but Bonnie's mother must have liked Stanley because when the couple returned from their first date, they found teacups and cake waiting for them to extend the evening. The whole family loved Stanley. He and Bonnie became godparents to Bonnie's nephew Donald before they were even engaged. And that shows what the family thought of him. Stanley and Bonnie were married on June 10th, 1965.
No, 50.
1956. That's what happens when you write it late at night. For more than 65 years, turn the numbers around, they did everything together. If Bonnie were invited to a baby shower, Stanley would go with her. Everybody just expected that. He'd be the only man often. He'd take videos. We've heard about the videos with the 8mm camera. They traveled together, and in later years they took care of each other. I could see the love during my visits. Their faces just glowed when in each other's presence. We heard a moving tribute from Fran, how Stanley was a loving father and father-in-law to Amy Favin and Ed Waldman, as Aaron and Sonny Favin, Fran and Barry Weisskopf. Stanley's children always felt lucky. Other people may have been a little fearful of their fathers, but not the Favins. Stanley never raised his voice or lifted a hand. He was so thoughtful and helpful, reminding his children to enjoy every minute of life. It's too precious. He helped them with math math homework, would help anyone who asked, even friends, and even real-world problem solving. When a nephew needed to figure out how high a ladder he needed to get to the roof, he called Stanley, who worked it out with the Pythagorean theorem. Stanley would do anything for his children, and there was little you wouldn't do for him, especially in recent years when both Stanley and Bonnie slowed down. Sonny was with Stanley every day for the last 5 years, feeding him, massaging his legs, helping him shave, making sure he dressed nicely. And during COVID, when in-person visiting was not permitted, you would talk to him through the window. It became a real lifeline. And those are Stanley's values. When someone needs help, you help. That's the legacy he leaves behind. He's a loving grandfather to David Waldman, Jessica Lynn and Michelle Favin, Melanie and Lindsay Weisskopf. Stanley was already retired when David was a baby. He would come over to play. Went to every recital, every event for Jessica Lynn and Michelle. They were in Baltimore, plenty, to visit Melanie and Lindsay. Stanley was overjoyed when Michelle was able to visit from California during COVID. All he wanted was to pull down the mask so he could see her face. And there's a beautiful picture of Stanley just looking up at his granddaughter and smiling. That's a face I remember also from when Stanley would come to services every Shabbat at B'nai Israel. I'm not sure I ever saw him not smiling, very proud of his Jewish identity. Before he and Bonnie joined B'nai Israel, they were members of Shari Tefillah for many years, where they shepherded children through B'nai Mitzvah and confirmation. He led the family Seder, conducted Shiva services and unveilings for friends. People sometimes called him their rabbi. When he turned 80, the one thing he wanted was to have an aliyah at B'nai Israel. It was hard for Stanley to get there at that point, but he did it. He really missed it when he couldn't travel to the synagogue anymore, but he did attend services at Bedford Court on occasion, and he really enjoyed that. I'm so glad that Colin Alter was able to share words during this service. After Stanley retired, he volunteered for the Jewish Information and Referral Service at Federation and also for Holy Cross Hospital. Truth be told, he wasn't completely ready for retirement, so he filled his days productively and meaningfully, and his calm, pleasant demeanor made him perfect for those roles. These last years were challenging. Stanley fought hard, but in the end, there is no winning against death. An ancient midrash imagines what it must be like when a person comes to those final moments. He looks everywhere for help. He calls to family members and says, "Help me, help me." But they respond with tears because they're helpless in the face of death. He calls to doctors and nurses, but they too are helpless when the final moment arrives. Even the best medicines, scientific technology, proves helpless when the final moment has arrived. But then the one whose lifespan is ending turns to his good deeds, and he cries for assistance, and they respond, "Fear not, al tira, lech b'shalom, go in peace, for we shall go before you to plead before the throne of mercy." That is my final prayer to Stanley Favin as his soul embarks on its final journey toward heaven. Lech b'shalom, go in peace. Yehei zichro baruch, may the memory of Stanley Favin, Shlomo ben Yitzchak ufuma Fega, always be a blessing. Shir Lama'alot, Esa Einai El Heharim, Me'ayin Yavo Ezri. Ezri Me'im Adonai, Oseh Shamayim Ba'aretz. Al Yitain Lamot Raglecha, Al Yanum Shomrecha, Hine Lo Yanum V'lo Yishan Shomer Yisrael. Adonai Shomrecha, Adonai Tzilcha Al Yad Yaminecha. Yomam Hashemesh Lo Yakeka V'yareach Balayla. Adonai Yishmorcha mikol ra, Yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai Yishmor tzeitecha uvoecha, me'ata v'yad olam. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and guard your life. Adonai guards your going and coming, now and forever. Al Mekomo Yavo B'Shalom. May Stanley Favin, Shlomo ben Yitzchak ufuma Fega, go unto God. Peace. The rabbis consider the mitzvah of Levayat Hametz, of accompanying the dead to the grave, to be the greatest of the mitzvot, what they call Chesed Shel Hamet, an act of true kindness. It's the only act for which the person on whose behalf we are doing this can never repay us. In just a moment, I'm going to begin the process of creating, seeing and clever creating a very exciting. I'm going to ask everyone who's able to participate in this important mitzvah, this important act of compassion, to do so. Traditions, because it's such a difficult mitzvah, same reason that we stop 7 times on our way to the site. The tradition is that we, the first shovel of earth is with the back side of the shovel. And when we finish, you can shovel as many times as you want. When we finish, you don't hand it to the next person. You put the shovel back in the pile and the next person take it themselves. You need to move these or leave them? These stay?
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if any of you would like to participate in this mitzvah, you can come on either side.
I was just figuring like there'd be like a donation thing at the name so that there. And I thought, oh, I don't want to get yourself a
Yeah.
Very unsteady. I know.
Is there a final
Even made me laugh. He might have made me laugh more than I made him laugh. That's not easy
Thank you. Thank you. I did my best. I mean, I think she kind of. Oh, be careful.
I remember the minute he told me. I was going to quit that story, but I didn't. Count the days.
Okay.
There's a prayer. There's a prayer called Siduk Hadin, which acknowledges that even in moments of profound sadness, we believe that God is ruler in the universe. Hatzor tamim po lo kichod racham mishpat elamuna beinav el tzadik v'yashar hu hatzor tamim b'chol po miyamar lamati pashim o nema miyut mechem arit she'ol bayal hatzor tamim b'chol maaseh miyamar lamata taseh ha'omer b'sech yisinachan lanu taseh v'zchut hanekah kesek she'ivaseh tzig b'chol racham hatzor tamim rachmim v'rachmim v'chanuah v'chusna levot tamanim ki lecha adon asichot v'rachamim tzadik latana lamid v'achil asher b'lecha pikton kol v'chol chol lecha zichonei l'mchot v'yinai necha v'rachmim alenu v'chol ki lecha adon rachmim v'asichot Adam ben Shana yeh ol shanim yechya ma yitron lo kol yeh Baruch Tayan Hamet Memitu Mechayeh Baruch Hu Kemet Yino Mesheda Kol Beino Meshleim Ladam Chesh Beno B'Dino B'Kol Lishmo Hodaya Yitenu Yadano Naki Setting Mishpatecha Yisak B'Davrecha V'Yiskebes Shotecha V'en Lahar Amina Shotecha Tzadikat Adonai V'Yashar Mishpatecha Tayan Emet Shofei Tzedek V'Emet Baruch Tayan Hamet Shekol Mishpatav Tzedek V'Emet Nefesh Kol Chai B'Yadecha Tzedek Mal'ah Yeminecha Rachem Al Plitat Son Yadecha V'Tumar LaMalach Heref Yadecha Gdol Yitzav Ravli Liyash Yernecha V'Kuchod Chodachef B'nei Adam Latit Laish Kidrachab V'Chefim Alalav Lagik Yashar Adonai Tzirivlov Latabo Adonai Natan B'Adonai Lakach Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach V'Hu Rachum Yechaper Abon V'Lo Yashchit V'Hirba Lashiv Apo V'Lo Ya'ir Kol Chamato. The perfect rock, whose work we perceive reveals a faithful God, true, upright, and honest. Dare we ask God to account for any deed. Have mercy upon us, strengthen us to maintain our courage at this time of sorrow. Adonai has given, Adonai has taken. Praise be the name of Adonai. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May the soul of Stanley Favin be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort to those who mourn, grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow, and let us say, Amen. We'll rise now for the Almala Memorial Prayer, and then the mourners will recite the Kaddish. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamaromim. Kamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachla Kanfei HaShechina. B'malot Kedoshim U'Tehorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Shlomo Ben Yitzchak Ufruma Fega Shehalach La'olamo Began Eden Tehei Menuchato Ana Ba'ala Rachamim Hastireo B'Seiter Kenafecha La'olamim Utzor B'Tzor Achem Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato Yanuach B'Shalom Mishkavo V'Nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Shlomo ben Yitzchak Ufruma Fega, Stanley Favin, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. The mourners will now recite the Kaddish. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei rabbah ve'alma divra kirutei ve'amlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'vchaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'gala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lolmei almayah yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yit hadar, v'yit aleh, v'yit halal, shemei dekudasha barichu, le'ela, min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran ba'alama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'imrumav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who establishes peace in the heavens grant peace to Stanley Favin, peace to those who mourn, peace to the Jewish people and all humanity. And we say Amen.
Amen.
Shiva is shortened because of the onset of Sukkot tomorrow night. Following this service, the family is going to be going to B'nai Israel congregation, 6301 Montrose Road in Rockville, where they're going to be having the meal of consolation and also sitting Shiva for the afternoon. It's an appropriate time for others who would like to share stories to do so. And we'll have around 2:30 or 3. We'll have a mincha service as well, and the family can say Kaddish at that time. As the family is now in Shiva.
And for those who were unable to come to the service today, or who just want to have some virtual togetherness, I did set up a Zoom Shiva tonight. Not a service, but just a togetherness. There's a link around on Facebook and such, so feel free to join.
At 7:30.
At 7:30 tonight.
Thank you. And now, as the family is sitting Shiva, it's our job to comfort them as mourners. And so I'm going to ask everybody who's not the immediate family to form 2 lines extending towards the road, facing each other so we can properly greet the mourners.
You too. You too.
Okay, now. Extend the traditional words of comfort. May God comfort you among all the mourners in Zion and Jerusalem, all the mourners.
Be like Soul Train. Thank you.
El Malay Rachamim, Shochen Bamaromim, Amsei Menucha Nechona, Tachar Kanfei HaShechina, B'malot Kedoshim U'Tehorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Shlomo Ben Yitzchak Ufruma Fega, Shehalach La'olamo, Began Eden Tehei Menuchato, Ana Bala Rachamim, Hastireo Beseter Kenafecha La'olamim, Utsor B'Tzor Achem Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachlato, Yanuach B'Shalom Mishkavo V'Nomar Amen.